Welcome, friends, to the weird room above the living room in my parents' cabin in Colorado. We're so glad you all could join us for some music and some stories and a good cup of tea. As long as the song keeps going on, there will be community as well. So, welcome and enjoy this hour, and we're so happy to have you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Cool. We'd like to talk today about the concept of rebirth. We felt it was a very appropriate thing to engage with right now because of the time of year. Easter, Passover, Easter,
Springtime.
springtime. Also,
So many people are also coming up with these new ways of relating to the world.
yeah,
And so we're having to learn new skills. We're having to, reinvent ourselves in a lot of ways, especially as artists, because we're not obviously out there performing our music the same way. And we're not able to teach the same way. So we've had to reinvent ourselves. So that's
yes.
another reason why we've chosen this topic.
Yeah. And the first person we'd like to invite to perform is Daniel. And what I find really fascinating about what Daniel does is correct me if I'm wrong, but you are going to improvise some music for us right now. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what that means is Daniel is going to spontaneously make some music. It's going to last about 5 minutes or so. And what I find really fascinating about this is every time you pick up that moment, Daniel, you are stepping into a moment of rebirth. I often think about rebirth as being resurrection, like the period before rebirth is death. But that's not true. The period before rebirth or before birth is the womb. And I think that we're all in the womb in some way right now, or that might be a helpful way to look at it. And I think that what you do is take us very literally into the moment of creation.
Yeah. So out of the silence,
Yeah.
the womb, the darkness of the womb, the silence of the womb, comes this sound, this music. So I love improvised music for that reason, and
Yeah.
improvised things in general, because it's creation on the spot, which is so amazing. So Daniel is a friend of ours through Diana. Actually, we met him, and we had him at Chai Sessions a couple of years ago when we did it in the flesh. And gosh, I mean, you play so many instruments. I couldn't even start to name them, but the one that's right in front of us that we see right here is the kora. And I would love if you told us a little bit about that instrument before you started, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. Well, thank you again, both of you, for having me here. It's an
Yeah.
honor. Very happy to be here. Um, yeah, the kora is a 21-stringed harp lute from West Africa. It's a harp lute because it's like a harp in that there are no frets, but it has a bridge, and harps don't have bridges, so it's called a bridge harp or a harp lute, sort of a combination of a harp and a lute.
Mm.
Has 21 strings, and it is sort of the traditional storytelling instrument of West Africa, and that's Senegal, Gambia, Mali, and Guinea-Bissau. Um, and I've been playing kora for over 20, almost 25 years now,
Wow.
and
Wow.
trying to take it into different territories, and also, I love playing the traditional music, and the traditional music
How
continues to inform me.
Can I ask you how you came to the kora, or like how did you get interested in it?
I mean, it kind of sought me out for
Oh,
years. I
yeah.
first heard it on a jazz record, of all things, a Steve Lacy record. He's sort of an avant-garde um, saxophonist, and there's one track where the bassist plays kora,
Mm.
and it just haunted me. And I had the album because I heard the record on NPR. That was the first time I'd heard it. That was like '88, and then I saw a kora when I was visiting Wesleyan for a concert in
Mm.
Connecticut in '93.
Oh,
That's where I went to school.
that's very
Oh,
interesting.
really?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
How
Oh,
wild.
that's so cool.
that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So that was one of the sort of notches in my discovery of the kora. Very important one, in fact. And then the third one was 1994. I was in Berkeley School of Music. My girlfriend at the time was auditioning for flute, and I was in the lobby. In the lobby, they had somebody had put up a thing saying "chorus for sale, Cora lessons." I was like, "Oh my God!" So I
Wow.
took the number down, and that was David Gilden, who is he has this website called Cora Connection, and he was kind of the guy who made this connection on the internet between the West and the East in terms of Cora. He's still going on live and performing um, on Facebook quite often. And so anyway, so long story short, um,
Yeah.
that was like I anyway. It wasn't until I moved to San Francisco in '95 that same girlfriend who, when I first saw that um, for sale sign
Mm-hmm.
in the Berkeley School of Music in Massachusetts, she called me and said, "Hey, there's a chorus for sale and Cora lessons in the Guardian."
Oh,
I was like,
wow.
"Oh my God!" So that was just like, I mean, how am I gonna? I mean, it's like a direct,
Meant to
you know.
be.
So,
Yeah.
and that was Alan Perlman. Excuse me, that was Alan Perlman. He's a Cora player, um, and luthier, guitar maker here in San Francisco. And got in
Wow.
touch with him, got my first Cora, and the rest is history. That was like '96.
That's amazing. Wow. Yeah, so it's been a little while. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
So thank you for sharing. Yeah, okay, so we are ready to hear a few minutes of your music, and we're going to silence ourselves and take it away.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Beautiful, man.
Yay!
Wow.
I'm gonna
Thank you.
applaud in the chat,
Ah.
just like
Thanks,
Kelly did.
guys.
That was
That's awesome.
wow.
And Taylor and all in band with the CCCs wanted to say hi to Yvette and E, our Y
Yes.
friends.
Yes, our Y friends. You were at the bottom of the list, so
Yes.
we couldn't see you right off the bat.
And my mom's college roommate, Paula Rentz. How cool is that? That is awesome.
Yeah.
We wanted to invite you guys to, in the chat, mention any like new hobbies or projects you've taken on during this time in terms of rebirth. I think
Yeah,
he's
any
pinned.
any creative. Yeah, sorry, I will unpin. Here we are.
Any new hobbies, any projects, or personal discoveries? Like during this time, if this is a new gestation, in what way will you be reborn when it's over?
Yeah. I'd love
That
to.
feels like a lovely segue into Michael.
Well, I was going to say, I'd love to actually open up that question to anyone, any of the artists, if you want to answer anything. Interior design, yes. Diana. Yes, she has been on a mission.
She has been tearing apart her whole apartment and redoing it, so that is true.
This is how Diana attacks the world. She just goes all in. Amazing.
Yes.
Mm.
You know, and then Masayo just asked, Daniel, was that a theremin you were playing? Oh, we need to
sorry,
unmute you.
Can you unmute? Here we go. I got you. Or no, I don't.
I think he's got to do it.
Good?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay. Yes, this is called an onde martineau, and it was invented around the same time as a theremin, So it's the same technology, only it's in the form of a keyboard.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions from our audience?
Yeah, please chime in with any questions
you're
you
welcome
have.
to ask.
Michael, you and I had a really fascinating discussion yesterday about rebirth. I know you have a lot of thoughts on this subject, and I think something we talked about was, is rebirth the evolution of something new, or is it the uncovery, the revelation, the discovery of something that's always been there?
Or the remembering, right? The remembering of something that's been forgotten.
As
Right?
opposed to dismembering, the remembering.
That's right. There's actually, it's funny you say that. In shamanic practice, one of the first sort of initiations or journeys that you take is called a skeletization process, where you go into some sort of alternate realm and beings come and literally take you apart. They unzip your skin, and it's actually very lovely. And the idea is that you are being divested of everything that is not your core self. And you get to, within the container that's established, you get to experience that realm as pure being, as pure spirit. And then when you float back to wherever, these little beings like scrub every little part of you clean of any like refuse or buildup or like calcium deposits and put you together. And it's exactly as real as you want it to be, right? So if you want to just make it up, that's awesome. Or if you want to believe that it's something that in some dimension of reality is actually happening, you can do that as well. But either way, when you come back, it feels like a rebirth and a renewal. And it's such a simple thing that we just, in our culture, we don't have language or processes for.
Yeah,
totally.
Wow.
Fascinating.
So Michael is, I think we mentioned one of our creative coaches. So he does coaching and storytelling. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind?
Sure. So I have a company called Story and Spirit. By company, I mean it's me with a website that says Story and Spirit on it. And the basic idea behind it is to support amazing people and organizations in rediscovering and harnessing the power of story to create change. Where story isn't just about like tactical communication and how do we get people to cry so they buy our whatever, and is really much more about the relationship we have with ourselves and each other and the wider world. And so like with you guys, we work on, I've never been called a creative coach before, so that's super fun, right? It's sort of creative coaching and helping you all in your process. With others, it looks more like energy healing. With others, it looks like group breathwork practices, where we move through a process of connecting with places where our story that we're holding about ourselves and the way we want to show up in the world are out of alignment, and then gently helping bring those back into alignment. And it's really evolved organically, probably over the last 10 years, as I've just tried to feel into how to be of the deepest service that I can in a way that is aligned with kind of my remembering of what I'm here to do in the world.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like steeped in rebirth all the time. You're almost like a rebirth doula.
Oh, should that be my new website, the Rebirth Doula? That'd be horrible. No,
Rebirth
wait, you say
obstetrician.
that. I don't like it, but if that resonates with people, we'll go with that. That's great.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, the idea is that we're constantly shedding things that aren't serving us anymore. And in our culture, what tends to happen is we wait for it to get to a crisis moment where there's like significant depression or addiction, and we have to hit bottom because we're Americans and that's what we do. And then only at that moment can we change, which is bullshit. You can change at any moment. And if you look at cultures around the world, they have practices and rites of passage and traditions that were there for that purpose. And we don't. So a lot of the work I do is about helping people remember that you don't have to wait for a crisis or for things to get really uncomfortable in order to embrace some level of change or transformation or rebirth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've experienced some of that for sure.
Without a doubt.
We thank you for your work. Yeah.
Sure. Well, and collectively, I think we're all going through that right now. One way of reading what's happening is kind of like a healing crisis in the world, where we're being asked to like, all of the things that don't work, a lot of the fissures in our society and the inequities are being aggressively revealed, and a spotlight is really being shown on them.
And in that way, it's a tremendous opportunity to create a new.
Yeah. Or at least to look at those things and go like, ooh, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, well, let's change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are excited to hear your story, and we're going to let you take the stage. I'm going to pin you, but you can unpin yourself, or you can change your view.
I don't know how to, you do the thing and I'll just talk about stuff. So it's funny with the theme of rebirth, my initial instinct was to tell a story that was like a conventional kind of spiritual awakening story. But I'm not going to do that because a 5-year-old son is watching and I don't want to talk about that. So I'm going to talk about growing up in Washington, D.C. In the chat, did anybody grow up in D.C.? If you did, just chime in because this may sound familiar. So I grew up in DC in the 1980s. And if people remember it, in the 1980s, the nickname of DC was the murder capital of the world because the per capita murder rate was incredibly high. We also had a mayor, Marion Barry, who was arrested for drug use and solicitation, went to jail, came back, and got reelected. So this was kind of the city. It was a weird place to grow up, and it wasn't incredibly safe. And I grew up in a neighborhood that was kind of right on the border between a very safe area, and then there was my block, and then there was a very not safe area. But because I grew up there, I always felt like everyone in the neighborhood kind of had my back because they knew me, and I knew them, and it really felt safe. It felt like home. Until one day, I'm 12 years old and I'm walking home from school. And as a 12-year-old, I was like a little scrawny pencil neck kid. And I had a 20-pound backpack on and these big Coke bottle glasses. And I was walking home from the subway as I did every day. And this group of kids appeared as if by magic on the other side of the street from me. And they were maybe a little older than me. They were definitely bigger. And they were, being guys. They were just jostling each other, kind of making wisecracks, whatever. And I looked at them and I felt, because I didn't recognize them, I was like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. Like something feels off about this. But I didn't want to be the guy who sees a group of other kids and then like gets scared, walks down the block out of his way and crosses the street. I don't want to be that guy. So I figure, all right, I'm going to make a plan. I kind of get my backpack higher up on my shoulders. And I know that what I'm going to try to do is when I walk by them, I'm just going to give them a little like up nod, a little head nod, like guys saying hi to guys. And so I'm doing it where the light changes. We're walking towards each other and I do this and I walk towards them and I'm like, hey guys. And the second my head goes up, I feel it. Boom, 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 boom. Several hits. I get hit in the stomach, the solar plexus. I get one on the side of my head. One of them kicks me in my shins. And it's like being put through like a car wash, right? And I get shot out the other side. And I can hear them high-fiving each other and saying like, did you see that kid? And I'm totally shaken and I do a quick inventory of my body and I'm okay. I'm like not bleeding, I'm not bruised, everything is fine, except that something inside has been really hurt. And in less than 10 seconds, these guys had taken away something that I had never even realized I had. They'd taken away my sense of safety and my sense of home. And so I walked the rest of the way to my house and my hand is trembling and I got the key from around my neck. So I was a latchkey kid and I kind of put it in the door and I opened the door and I went and I got a Twinkie, which is exactly what you want to do when you're having like a panic attack. And then I sat there and I did homework and I waited for my parents to get home. And all I needed in that moment was a hug. And my mom got home and I wanted to ask her for one. And I had never asked her for that before. I'd never asked her for any kind of support. And there was no reason to think that she wouldn't give me one, except she had this way of interacting. Like when I was sick, she would ask, are you gonna die? And I'd say no, and she'd say, then suck it up. And so that night we're having dinner. My dad and I microwaved 2 Stouffer's pepper steaks, which is disgusting, by the way, if you've ever had one, they're not delicious. And my mom smoked her cigarette. And I remember there's a fan that we had in our dining room that just whirred overhead, spreading the smoke over these tar yellowed walls. And dinner that night went like dinner always went. My dad would look at my mom and say, stop smoking. And she would look at him eating and say, you're fat. And they would just lob these volleys back and forth, this kind of casual bullying and cruelty, until finally my mother her attention swiveled to me, and she noticed I wasn't eating. And she said, "Why aren't you eating?" And I could have said, because I got beat up a little bit and I'm shaken, but it didn't feel safe. And so instead I said, "I'm not hungry." And then she said the word that she always said when she didn't understand something. She just very casually said, "You're pathetic." And I just looked at her, and I remember going upstairs to my room and feeling this sense of emptiness and rage. And I wanted to get back at those kids, except I didn't know them. I didn't know what they looked like. So I just kind of wanted to get back at anybody who looked like them. And not just them, I wanted to get back at their entire families. I wanted to make them feel small. I wanted to back them into a corner. And frankly, I wanted to make them feel the way my mother made me feel. So like 20 years later, that all came out in a therapy session. My therapist was so excited. She was like, "Eureka, we found it." And then she therapied me and I cried. It was all very healing and lovely. And then, of course, the relationship with my mom was perfect. That's not true. So I thought it was until about 6 years ago. I'm on the phone with my mom. And at the end of this call, she just kind of casually says, "Okay, love you, kiddo." And I just froze, because love is not a word we use in my family. We don't say like, "I like you" or "nice hair," much less love. And I could hear in the tone of her voice that all she wanted in that moment was for me to say it back to her, was to hear her only child say that. And I let the silence drag on. And I'll be honest, it felt incredibly empowering. And as the silence dragged on, I took the moment and I simply said, "Talk to you later," and hung up. And over the miles, I was in Chicago at the time and she was still in DC, I could almost feel the pain that it had caused her. And it didn't feel good. It didn't feel like victory. It felt empty. And at the other hand, I was just trembling, because how dare she? How dare she suddenly introduce this whole new way of being when we had never talked about everything that had happened during my childhood? A couple weeks after that, I found myself back in DC for my 20-year high school reunion. And I was staying with this guy, Alex, who had worked with my mom. And Alex, for my senior prom, he and his partner, John, had lent me this iridescent bright blue tuxedo. And when I had gone to try it on, Alex had awkwardly approached me with a fishbowl full of multicolored condoms and said, "Hey, have a good time at prom, be safe." And I'd taken one and it had seemed so weird. So this night, when I was back in DC staying with them, he sat me down and he was a few vodkas in, and he says, "You remember that night when you came over and we gave you those condoms?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he goes, "You know why we did that?" It's like, "No." And he said, "Because your mom asked us to, because she had no idea what to do with you and needed help to keep you safe." And it was a really profound moment for me, because it had been years since I thought my mom knew everything. But it had never occurred to me how scared she'd been, how much she had sacrificed in order to raise me, both her and my father. It had never occurred to me that she was at her wit's end. And at the time, she was younger than I am now. She was 42 years old. I'm 43, and I can't imagine having a teenager right now. And it was such a moment of clarity that I felt something click. And just a few weeks ago, when this whole COVID thing started, I felt an unexpected urge to reach out to my parents to make sure they were okay. And I called them. They live in Chicago now, and I'm in Los Angeles. And my mom picked up, and I could hear in her voice that she was feeling not unlike the way I had felt when those kids had beaten me up a little. I could tell from the sound of her voice that she no longer felt as safe in the world. And I noticed in myself a growing sense of wanting to protect her, of wanting to help her feel safe during these incredibly unsafe on many level times. And while I'll be totally honest. I still don't say I love you that often to her. I do feel the urge. It's almost as if the relationship is being reborn, except instead of her protecting me, I get to provide a little bit of safety for her. And in that way, hopefully, heal the entire family. And it feels like if there is a gift to be found during these times, that's not a bad one. And it's pretty cool. Ta-da!
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Dave wants to applaud you in the chat. Wow. Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I
feels,
I
man.
physically
Thank you.
felt that one.
She sure did.
Whew.
She was like,
through
her
it over
hand
here.
was
I
on my knee. The feels.
Wow. That's an
That is a
amazing
powerful story.
Very powerful, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing.
Of course.
With
Thank you.
us. Well, and it's so beautiful that you are not only reaching out to your parents and wanting to support them during this time, but that it has become your work. I mean, you support people and you help them, and that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it does feel like maybe this is coinciding with a shift, a generational shift, a generational change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that that's different for both generations. And there's goodness in that, and there's fear in that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to check in with the chat. Yeah, so Chris says, good story. Kelly says, wow, very touching. He says, amazing story. Wow.
And your mother said she remembered when Marion Barry was he was mayor?
He was the mayor, and it was long before, who was the guy in Toronto? Remember that? It was like
Ford,
yeah, Rob Ford. So it was like and that was like with social media and everything. So with Marion Barry, there was no social media. It was just this unreal thing where the city was so corrupt that the only person who could run it was him. It was really
and when they doubled down, just incredible.
Yeah, it was so fascinating. Yeah, it's and what I kind of love about that story, if I can say that I love things about my own story, is that weird?
Yeah, you can say that, absolutely.
Well, is that I was thinking about it this morning. I've told parts of it before, but never that way. It really is a beautiful reminder of the transformation that becomes possible when we become acquainted with kind of the landscape of our own wounds. Those places where we're most hurt become the places where we're most deeply able to be of service.
Yeah.
Right? Like Jennifer, you said, I've kind of dedicated much of my life to creating spaces where people can feel safety and cultivate that sense of safety in themselves and in the world. Yeah. And if I hadn't had those experiences as a kid, I don't think I would have the same interest in or capacity to move in those spaces.
I'm not crazy about superhero movies and like how every movie these days is a new superhero movie. But what is fascinating about the superhero narrative is how the super wound becomes the superpower.
Yeah.
And I think that is a powerful statement.
Yeah, and there's a tricky thing with that, which is we've grown up with those superhero movies, and so a lot of people think that unless they've had a super wound, like a deep dark secret, then they're not worthy of telling their story, which is a fundamental misunderstanding, right? Because so many people go through life and they're like, oh, I'm fine, I'm not a wounded veteran, right? I wasn't abused by my parents. And so they don't think their story is worth sharing or worth investigating. And the truth is, everybody has these beautiful moments that they probably just take for granted in their lives, but that are so full of power. And I love helping people discover those.
That is so true. And like, if that's not the perfect lead into Diana, like, what is?
I know. This is because Diana has overcome her own thing in life, her own battle with performance anxiety, and that's why you do what you do now, right? I mean, you're helping people to overcome that in themselves and become their most creative selves.
Yeah. As soon as I started music as a child, I absolutely fell in love with it. I started with piano and I still play piano. And, it felt so real. Everything felt so great when I was playing. And very soon I decided, oh, I want to become a musician. And shortly after that, that's when I began to develop outrageous performance anxiety. I mean, to this day, and I've worked with thousands of people at this point, this was definitely one of the very worst examples ever that I've seen. So, that happened and plagued me for years and years to the point where I actually did give up
Yeah.
on music. And
How old were you when you knew, or when you realized that you had performance anxiety? When did
about
that first sort
10
of,
years old.
10 years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's an impressionable age.
Yeah, and it was super, super strong. I mean, I would throw up, I would cry, I would try to do anything to get out of performing. And at the same time, I felt like I had to because it was my only option. That's what I saw. The only thing that would happen with musicians is, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't think of any other way of being with my music, except to actually be performing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's much more open these days. Yeah, but this was pre-internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I want to dig into this story a little bit more with you. If the rest of you artists, I think we're gonna segue into a little interview with Diana at this point. If you guys want to turn off your cameras, we will see you soon. Um, eh, um,
So
so
Diana's recently written a
yeah,
book.
Diana recently released a book. And
Yes.
my first interview question for you that I
Yeah.
wrote down was, what is it like to release a book right now in these crazy times? I mean, what?
Well, it was great for the first week
Yeah.
because it released 1 week before everything hit, and that was a phenomenal week. And we'd done so much to lead up to that and prepare for it. And then the second week, everything hit, and so everything we'd prepared no longer worked because it was so sunny and bright, and positive, which is what I love to lead with and continue to lead with. But I had to also reflect the more challenging aspects of this time. And so, in a way, I relish the opportunity to delve into sort of the more serious part of the Bright Way, which is the book, 5 Steps to Freeing the Creative Within, because everybody is creative, everybody has creativity within them. So I get to talk much more about creativity as connection. I believe the ultimate reason we're creative is in order to connect to our true selves, to connect to others, to connect to the world at large. And when we lose sight of that, that's when we actually get performance anxiety. Because honestly, I think performance anxiety at the end of the day is a spiritual crisis. It's something out of alignment in your spirit. Now, and that's always about connection because spirit is connection. That's its ultimate thing. So number one, I get to talk a lot more about that, which is fabulous, rather than, people will tend to want to talk more about performance anxiety and things like that with their creativity, which I understand. But now, everything is on the table as the biggest issues at hand. And so it's going to be connection. And the other one is going to be resilience. So when you are creative, you get your resilience back because when you're creative, of course, you're being connected and there's this heart-centeredness that's everything. So when we think the word courage, that comes from cœur, French for heart. You're leading instead with the heart. You're leading with courage. So when you engage in your creativity, it all ultimately really pushes up your resilience, which is exactly what we need right now. So previously where it may have felt like, oh, creativity can be something of a luxury, something that you might want to engage with, when you have time. Now people are turning to creativity as the way that's helping them get through this moment. And I don't think they're going to forget that. I think people are going to love being creative again. I mean, I know that I'm just feeling so excited about redoing my entire house. So, they're not going to forget that.
No.
And I think this is the renaissance that we're looking at now. This rebirth that we're having now
Yeah.
is a reclaiming of everyone's innate creativity.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'm also hearing, privately, because people also want to be sensitive to the suffering that's going on, but privately, they're also saying to me, I don't know that I want to go back to the way it was before.
Yeah.
I don't know that that normal was so great or so normal at all.
Right.
I don't know how natural it was.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
A lot of sense. And I totally relate to everything you're saying. And I also love that people are coming out with more courage and like, giving living room concerts and just kind of experimenting and trying all of these things creatively, because we have more limitations, right? So there's a way to, sometimes you need a little bit of a structure or a limitation to help you become a more
yeah. It
creative.
creates, a frame.
Yeah.
And so, we think about blank canvas syndrome where anything's possible, so then you don't do anything at all. And now people are limited. And again, to talk about my house, I'm stuck in my house for once. And next thing you know, everything's getting painted and moved around. And, it's great. It's, a frame can really, really help us.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
It gives context to the situation.
Yeah, I want to go to the chat for just a minute and see if anybody has any questions or comments. Um, Chris says, I became an ASL teacher because of a complete breakdown in Vienna. So I healed my teaching by teaching many, many people to speak English. Wow. Karen says, I teach children, had kids who threw up, even an asthma attack. That was an eventful concert. Oh, yeah, I bet. Performance anxiety suffocates the most prepared student. Yes, it does.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What do you say to people who say that they aren't creative?
I hear it all the time. It's just not true. I mean, people are creative. People are innately creative. So I feel like creativity happens when you directly engage with anything. So right now we're being creative, right? We're having a conversation. You can be creative in your cooking. You can be creative in so many different ways than just making what we think of as art. Art is a great way to be creative, but there are so many other ways to do that as well. So whenever you directly engage with something, you're being creative.
Right.
And when we directly engage, we feel alive. And this is something anybody can do at any moment in time. So, when people say I'm not creative, it's just not possible unless you're really, really not engaging with your life. But you can always change that. You can always re-engage, reach out to a conversation,
Yeah.
get
Totally.
more creative in the garden, all of that stuff.
I would love to hear more about how you came, speaking of creative, and coming back to music. Like, how did you find your way back to music
Yeah.
after taking a break?
Well, so I went to college for music, went to Berkeley, and I was like, I'm going to have a very short life at this point. I just cannot stand this anxiety. It's just horrendous. I hate my life. It was a sad thing. And so I switched over to creating my own major. So in Berkeley, you can do that. And I focused on social work because I've always been very interested in empowering people. I believe that when people are empowered, it is a better world. I want people to be empowered. That's why I talk about creativity all the time. When I see someone being creative, I see them in their power. And if someone is in their true power, like their true selves, not the ego power, but true power, they make decisions much more from the heart, from a place of courage. And so I want to live in that world. So we could even say I'm being selfish and focusing on social work because I want to be surrounded by people who are empowered and feeling great about themselves rather than crap about themselves. So I studied social work, and as part of that, I had to work in battered women's shelters, halfway houses, free clinics, people who really were suffering. They had hit rock bottom. They were really, really suffering. And, I would do a lot of talk therapy stuff with them and all the different modalities that we worked with. But eventually people would always figure out that I played piano. So I didn't play harp yet at that time. And so they would ask me questions like, well, can you show me a little this, little that, and I would show them things on whatever junky keyboard was around, because there was usually something around, in any of these places. And I would see how they reacted when they were just playing the simplest things. And this kind of dignity came out from them. This type of strength came out. And I was like, my God, this really is affecting these people. And I had thought of music also as a little bit of a luxury. My parents were never giving me that message. My parents were always like, music is the greatest art and art is the greatest thing. You know, that was always their perspective. So I never got a single question about, do you think making a musician your lifestyle an unstable one? That was never part of the story. So I'm very grateful to them for that, because that's a very unusual situation that I found out later. I didn't know how unusual that was, actually. But you know, I saw the effect that it had on those people that I was working with, who really had hit rock bottom, and I realized, you know, music really is a valid thing. It's not just some luxury that, you know, privileged people take part in. But still, I didn't have enough of a foothold to get back into music for myself. Then my housemates that I was living with, they would kind of figure out that I could play. And there was, again, always some junky keyboard around. So I would show them stuff. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna just rent a piano myself and just play for myself. So I began playing on that. And I was like, this is fun. And I began teaching people. And as I was teaching people, I saw how much anxiety there was out there about creativity. And again, I had not known how common it was. I had a very extreme case, but I didn't know, actually, you know, this is a pretty normal thing to happen. And so, you know, it was really from working with others and seeing the power of music on the one hand, and also seeing how common anxiety was, that helped me put my situation into more context. Because, you know, unusually also in the way that I grew up, the people I was surrounded by with music didn't have performance anxiety. And this is extremely rare. But these were my, you know, benchmarks. These were the people I measured myself against.
Sure.
And so I thought there was something terribly wrong with me, you know, and I even tried to keep it secret in many ways.
Yeah.
So, because I thought it was a bad sign. It was
Yeah.
a sign I wasn't chosen and all. Yeah, right.
The same way.
So I had put myself in this horrible corner. And so it was really, you know, in working with other people and working with people who had hit rock bottom and seeing what music did to them, and then teaching other people and realizing how common performance anxiety was, to made me able to start facing my situation.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're inspired by others, as we all are.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk to you for hours about this, and I want everybody to know about your book, and I want everybody to know about
Thank
all
you.
these amazing things. And I'm also aware of the time, because I don't want to keep people too long after the hour. And we do want to hear you play, and we also
Oh,
want to
that's
hear
right.
a little
I
more,
will play.
a little
Yeah.
more from Daniel too. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, show your
So,
book.
so
Tell us
this is
how
the
to
book,
find it the bright way.
The Right Way. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Kelly just put in the chat that she just bought your book
Oh,
from
thank you,
Powell's.
Kelly.
Yay!
Is this Kelly the singer?
Yeah, I think you.
Hey, Kelly.
Yeah. Anyone have any questions for Diana?
Yeah, maybe Daniel could play and people can pose any questions
Yeah, if
they
you have any
have.
questions for actually
Yeah.
any of us, why
Yeah.
don't you go ahead and put those in the chat box, and we will have a short question and answer after Daniel and Diana play.
Yes.
So Daniel, you're up.
He might have to come back.
He has to come back.
Yeah.
Here he is.
Welcome back.
And you are unmuted. Yay.
Thank you. Yay. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to play right now.
Oh,
Oh, you
well,
are?
this
That's
was
good.
quite
Well,
spontaneous indeed.
do you want to play?
I love it. Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Thank you. Thank you so
Had a
much.
really lovely energy to it. So
Gorgeous.
yeah,
I don't know how you do that.
I know you're like a one-man band. That's
It's
amazing. It's
incredible.
amazing.
And I love how you have like the harp that has the discrete notes, and then you have the bendy note of the Ormond. What was it called again?
Und Martineau.
Old Mont. Oh, I wasn't even close at all, but that's awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
Und Martineau. Actually, this is the Japanese version of the French Ont Martineau. It's called Ondomo. It's much easier to say. So Ondomo.
Nice.
Oh, Domo.
This might be a good time for artists for you to put little links in the chat box of where to get your music, where to get your books. Michael is also an author.
We are
He's written a
getting
couple
private
books.
messages about like
Yes,
where can
people wanna
I
know.
see what Michael does. I'm getting
Inquiring
texts from my
minds.
parents of like where can we buy these books? Does Daniel have CDs? Like
Yes.
so let's put those in there and everybody hopefully that satisfies that.
Yeah. And we have one more song.
Yeah, we were hoping Diana you would play another song. It
Diana.
would be we're a little bit over, but anybody who's bored can go, and
That's
anybody
right.
who's
You don't
enjoying
have
it
to
can
stay.
stay.
That's right. This is one of my favorite songs that Diana has written. And,
Yeah, it's a short song, right?
and it's
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's
Can
beautiful.
you tell us what it's about?
This song is called When I Opened My Eyes, and it's from an Irish poem. So this poem uses imagery from Newgrange. So Newgrange is an ancient site, 5,000 years old, where on the winter solstice, as the sun rises, a beam of sunlight goes right down this passageway in that mound, and it makes a room in the back of the mound glow golden for a number of minutes, and it's still accurate after 5,000 years. So this ancient phenomenon in this poem is connected to the idea of a new relationship as well, this bursting forth of a new relationship. And so it's very much like the rebirth theme in many ways. So we've got the ancient, so we're coming back to our roots, we're coming back to what really matters, we're coming back to our true selves, our spirits that are eternal. And at the same time, it's a new year. I mean, there's a new thing coming, right? We will, yeah. So even while we reclaim the old, we have something new to look forward to, a new vision.
Beautiful.
Totally beautiful. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, well, you guys requested it, so.
Yeah, I did. Enjoy.
All right.
Beautiful.
cool. Thank
So
you.
pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah, love that piece. And I love singing it too with you.
Yes, yes. So the words, yeah, it has words. And the words are originally in Irish but translated into English, and Jennifer sings them in English. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for creating this, you guys.
yeah, you're welcome. Thank
Me
you
too.
everyone for being here. I am going to put a little link to how you can tip and donate your artists today. Donate to your artists today. That just went on the chat.
Yeah.
Let's say everybody. Okay, great. And I wanted to ask the audience if you have any questions. That now is your last chance to ask any questions. And I just want to say thank you to all of the artists. Trina says thank you to Diana. That was lovely. Oh, I love listening to you speak about your
Hey,
journey.
Margie. I see Margie's there.
Yeah.
Oh, we should unpin her.
Oh yeah. Let me go back to gallery view and unpin you. Nice.
Yeah.
Is there anything that any artist, any of you want to say before we go in terms of rebirth, or anything that is burning, or what's that?
I mean, something is kind of burning for me, I have to say.
Yeah, please.
Is, in this rebirth moment, I mean, I feel we have such an incredible opportunity to revision what is going forward. In this rebirth, I think we can consciously create what is going to happen. We have a chance to revamp things in a very conscious way, in that everything is being addressed right now, from the economic structure to the health structure to the education system to absolutely everything is on the table, and we're all in the same situation. Admittedly, some people have a much more difficult situation, but it's happening to everybody right now. It's not like, oh, that's happening in that other place. It is happening here, no matter where we are. And so, I think as creatives, which we all are, absolutely everybody on this call and everybody listening is creative, we have a chance to shape this vision going forward. So in this rebirth, I think we can take great part in it,
Agreed.
And so I feel very excited about that potential right there.
Me too. Yeah. As hard as this time is, I also really feel that opportunity.
Right.
Michael, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you had a definition of apocalypse that I thought was fascinating, because I just think of apocalypse as the end of the world and the zombies are attacking, and
It's not mine. Yeah, it's the ancient definition of apocalypse from apocalypsis means unveiling, right? The pulling away of the veil. And the implication of it is that what is known falls away and that there's new stuff that comes up. And those are concurrent processes. So when we think of apocalypse, it's always about the destruction. And we don't think about the rebirth part. The other thing that is sort of alive for me in this moment is a moment that was shared with me with a mentor before a pretty intense kind of ritual. When he looked at me and he said, your only job is to get through this. Your literal only job is to survive the next 3 days. And I know a lot of the folks I've been talking to feel this urge to like recreate and imagine what comes next. And all their body's able to do is nap, and they find themselves judging themselves. And so like the words, I think there's space for all of the reactions.
Yeah.
And there has to be that, like, if we need to like cuddle up in a blanket for a day and turn off all the screens and cry, we got to do that. We have to pay attention to our bodies. And if we feel the urge to create and imagine and collaborate, that's beautiful too.
Agreed.
I think about all the parents with kids and how they're afraid the kids are falling behind in their education, and how are they going to know the state capitals and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, this is such a rich education in simply surviving it, in simply going through it. It's not any sort of traditional education, but it is absolutely a value.
I think as soon as we are engaged with the situation that we're in, then we're being creative, and that does not mean being productive. I think a lot of people mistake creativity with productivity, and those are not the same at all. It can be highly creative to lie on the couch and dream, or to lie on the couch and just regenerate because you're recreating your body. But in any case, you are really there. You are present at that moment. And I think that's another, with the direct engagement piece, hallmark of creativity is presence. And we're all very present right now. So whatever that happens to look like, and it is not going to look like I'm generating products only.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally agree. I love all this stuff, and I wish we could just go on and on, because I know we would just come up with more and more juicy things. But I don't want to keep you all, but I want to thank you all for
Thank you
being
all
here.
so
And
much for coming.
We are gonna we're gonna go out with our little gratitude song.
Yes.
That's our little.
Well, let's first mention that we will be doing another chai session.
May 3rd, I think, is
May 3rd, we think, if we aren't crying on the couch under a blanket. We have a
creatively.
We have a
champion
like a world champion
whistler joining us,
and
Emily.
that sounds like some sort of novelty, but it's like it's beautiful to listen to somebody who can whistle. It's an instrument. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And we have a comedian from
grad school.
Amsterdam who's going to join us at like 5 in the morning or something like that. And we may be sharing a comic about somebody's trip to Finland. We'll see.
This guy's comic.
We'll see. And I do want to mention the money thing again. Just if you find yourself with extra money at this moment and feel the urge to express your values of what you value, any donations you make goes directly to the people you've seen on the screen. So you can also do that by buying their books or buying their CDs or employing their services.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
really, this is a great opportunity for that.
Yeah.
And we'd like to say thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
And the way that we say thank you in our family of 2 people at this moment is to sing what we call the gratitude song.
And it's really easy. You can jump in at the end, because we're not going to hear you, so you can sing any way you want to. But then just goes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And when you do that in person and you're sitting at a table or something, you point at each person and you let them know that you are thankful for them. And you can look in the little chat box or whatever you want to do, or whoever's in the room with you. So the song goes, and now we take this moment to express our heartfelt gratitude, because sometimes we can forget just how much we are truly blessed. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you somewhere.
Thank you for taking the time with us.
Yeah. Thank you.